Welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Tonight's program and 14 more that we'll be producing this summer are funded in part by a grant from the Oklahoma Foundation for the Humanities, which will cover some of the expenses of producing and distributing the show. So we'd like to thank them for their support. This show is part 2 of an examination of the Caddo language. This is part of our series, Indian Languages Are Not Primitive Languages. Some people are under the impression that Indian languages are simple or primitive compared to English or other languages, but not so. As a linguist, I'm trained in seeing and presenting in an analytical way the grammar or structure of languages. And my purpose tonight is to show that Caddo, like all languages, is rich, complex, and fascinating. Let's review briefly what we know about Caddo from last week's show. Caddo is spoken by only about 30 people or so in the Caddo tribe, which has its headquarters in Binger. So speakers live mainly in the area of Binger and Anadarko. Like many of the Indian languages of Oklahoma, Caddo is very endangered due to the small number of speakers, their advanced age, and the lack of sufficient classes and activities to pass on the language to a new generation. Let's review briefly what we talked about last time and then go on to further topics in the Caddo language. We talked some about the sounds of Caddo. And I've written a series of letters up here that can represent the 22 sounds in the Caddo language. Last time we gave examples of each one. I think in the interest of saving some time, this time I'll just highlight a few of the more interesting sounds. First of all, you'll notice some of the sounds, as in English, are represented with 2 letters, like CH, which is pronounced ch, or TS, which is ts. Most of them are written with 1 letter. A few have a special symbol here, this apostrophe, T apostrophe, CH apostrophe, TS apostrophe, and K apostrophe. Now, those are consonants in a series that can be called glottalized consonants, or ejectives is another term for these. And they're made, it sort of sounds like you have a little hiccup in your throat when you say them. So this is the sound ch, the plain CH, and this is ch. I'll give you an example of these in a moment. I just realized I should give you some vowels first. There are only 3 vowels in the whole list, and they're pronounced a, e, and u. The a sometimes, within a syllable, if there's a consonant following, it will sound more like but it's or a, e, and u. Now that we have some vowels, let me give you some examples of these consonants. Many of the consonants are pronounced just as they would be in English, but these glottalized or ejective consonants are a little bit different. Here's an example of the glottalized CH. This would be pronounced chaya, and it means turtle. We also have the K with the apostrophe, the glottalized K. In fact, we have a plain K and a glottalized in this word. This is pronounced kanku, and it means liver. And then for the glottalized T, we could cite the word tana, which means again. And finally, for the TS, we have tsatawin, which means possum. All right, so those are the glottalized consonants. Most of the consonants are pronounced, as I said, as they would be in English. The vowels are pronounced a, e, u. And what else do we have? We have this one other consonant I wanted to draw attention to here, the one that looks like a question mark without a dot. That's called Glottal Stop. This is how you spell the name for the thing. This is a linguistic term, really. Glottal Stop. And it's a consonant just like the others. It's one we don't really have in English, but it's pronounced like a little catch in the voice. It's kind of the middle sound of the English expression, uh-oh. If there were no glottal stop in the middle, it would be uh-oh, but there's a little catch, uh-oh. It's that That's the glottal stop. And let me show you some examples of that in Caddo words. Let's see. We have the word for prairie dog, which is pronounced doot. Doot. And we have the word for night, which has a glottal stop on the end. That's pronounced nupba, nupba. And finally, we have a real tough one that I have a hard time pronouncing. We can have a glottal stop and another consonant at the beginning of a word, like in this word for bear. Let me make sure I put in all the letters. Nope, let's see. And this is the animal, the bear. It's pronounced no, see. That's the best I can do. It's very hard to do this combination of sounds if you're not used to it. And I'm not too good at those yet. But those are glottal stops and glottalized consonants and the 3 vowels of Caddo. In addition, there are some diphthongs, which we didn't mention last time. And let me just show you a couple of examples of those. Diphthongs are, can be described as a combination of a vowel and a semivowel. A semivowel is usually something like W or Y. In Caddo, those are going to figure in the diphthongs. So we have words like the word for yes, which is ahay. And here's the diphthong right here, this ay. It's pronounced ahay, yes. And then we have aw, as in habit, so sweet. And here's your diphthong. That means sweet. So this is A, this is O. And then we have habiukat, which means old. And here's your diphthong, the IW. It's pronounced ew, habiukat. This means old. And there's one more, let's see, guine, which means gourd. Actually has 2 diphthongs in it. There's the AY again, like we had up here, and then the UY, guine, gourd. So those are the basics of the sounds of Caddo. Now you need to know a couple of other wrinkles. You need to know about length and pitch. So I'll give you a couple of examples quickly of that. Length. Vowels can be long or short, and by a long vowel, I don't mean like long U and short U, the way the English terminology is used, but I mean, to give an example of a long A, I mean a word like kadut. When it's a long vowel, we just write the vowel twice. Kadut. This means gum. And if this were not a long A, if we had just the one A, K-A-D-U-T, that would be kadut, but it's kadut. You just hold on to that vowel a little bit longer, and that's why it's called a long vowel. And all 3 vowels can be long. A word with a long I would be hasine. There's a long vowel right here, which means caddo. And one with a long U would be shuwit, which means man or warrior. Put man to save time. Here's a good example that has a long and a short vowel, so you can kind of see the contrast. This is the word for milk. It has a long U right here, and then a short one right here. Let me check. Now this is a high pitch mark, which I'll explain in just a moment. This is pronounced tsu, tsu. There's an oo and then an oo. Tsu, tsu, and that means milk. So that's long vowels. Consonants can also be long, and when they're long, we just write them double. Let me give you just a couple of examples of that. Let's take a long T, like in the word for here. Glottal stop on the end. This is dit. And that T, you just kind of hold on to the T a little bit longer as we did with the vowels. Dit, dit means here. Excuse me. And another example would be of it with a double K would be nuka, which means I don't know. Nuka. So there's a double K there and a double T here. Now one final thing about the sounds, and that is pitch, which I mentioned a moment ago. In Caddo, you need to pay attention to what the pitch of your voice on the different syllables in a word. It's what's called a pitch accent language. And so pitch is particularly important. You've seen me writing some accents. The ones I've written so far, I think, were all the high pitch mark, as in the word for dog. There's a high pitch mark. It's just an accent that goes this way. Di, si. This means dog. And what we have here is two vowels of different pitch. It's the same vowel. They're both pronounced E, but this one is higher, and so it has the high pitch mark on it. And this one is low, and so it has no mark on it. That's the convention we're using here. So it's di, si, e, 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 di, si. So this is a high-pitched vowel and a low-pitched. And there's also, this is much rarer, but there's also a falling pitch that you'll sometimes mark with an accent going the opposite way like this. And it's always on a long vowel. Di, tama would be an example. Di, tama, which is the word for horse. And actually these words are related historically. Di, tama. So it goes E. It's a falling. It starts high and goes low. And then these two are low because they don't have an accent at all. Di, tama means horse. So those are the sounds of Caddo. And I mentioned last time that there are a couple of words. There are actually some others. But we mentioned two words that have been borrowed from Caddo into English. They are place names. One is the name for Anadarko, the city Anadarko. So let me just show you how that would be spelled in the original, Anadarko. Comes from a Caddo word, phrase really, Nadaku. This first word here just means location. You'll find this in a lot of place names. In fact, Binger is known as Nabinka in Caddo, using the English term and just putting the na in front to show that it's a place name. This second word here, Daku, means bumblebee. So the name Anadarko means place of the bumblebee or bumblebee place or something like that. And the other word we mentioned was Texas, the name of the state of Texas. Originally in Caddo, this was pronounced te-sha. Te, high pitch, diphthong, sha. Glottal stop on the end. And this actually is the Caddo word for friend. And what I think probably happened here is that this word te-sha as a name for the place was borrowed probably by Mexican Spanish speakers who added the S to kind of make it plural. They're saying they were going to call this place friends, so they started pronouncing it te-shas, which at that time in Spanish would have been spelled like this. And then if you pronounce this in English, it comes out sounding like Texas. So those are two interesting words with a Caddo history to them. Now, we went on and talked a little bit about the grammar of Caddo, that is how you build up words out of these sounds, and how you, we didn't get really into very much into how to make sentences out of words, but let me review just a couple of these things. And then I want to look a little bit at semantics as well this week, which I think is a very interesting area. So let's go ahead and get rid of our letters for now and talk about some verbs. Nouns don't have nearly as interesting of a structure, I think, overall as verbs do. The situation in Caddo is that it's been called a polysynthetic language, which is a big $10 word that's used in linguistics. That basically means that you'll find a lot of words that are made up of many parts. You'll find like a stem, a verb stem, with maybe several prefixes on it and maybe several suffixes. They even have something called an infix in Caddo that not every language has. English certainly doesn't have this. Let me give you an easy example to show the infix and to show one interesting thing about Caddo verbs. We're going to give some commands here. And now in English, our commands basically have one form as far as number goes. If I want to tell one person to walk, I say walk. If I want to tell a bunch of people to walk, I say walk. There's no change. Very unsophisticated language, this English. In Caddo, we have 3 different forms of commands. They can be singular, dual, or plural. So here's another new thing, this dual category. Dual means referring to exactly two. So if I wanted to tell one person, sing, I would take the Caddo word. The stem is something like ne-o, which means sing. And to make it a command, I put this prefix on it. And it comes out .ne-o. I'll put a little exclamation point on the end to show that I'm giving somebody an order. So this is telling one person, sing. If you want to tell 2 people to sing, you need to put an extra prefix in here, and it comes out like this. .we-ne-o. And you can really hear that pitch, that one syllable has a much higher pitch than the others. .we-ne-o. And that's telling 2 people to sing. And if you want to tell 3 or more people, from 3 on up, you would say .ne-wa-o. And that would mean something like, y'all sing. Notice what happened here. We were saying that the ne-o part meant sing, which it does, but we see here that ne-o can be divided into 2 parts. In other words, it can be split up by this thing that was stuck in the middle that makes it plural. This is the thing that we're calling an infix. So Caddo has prefixes like this, and like this one that makes it dual. And it also has infixes, and it has suffixes, which we haven't seen yet. Let me give you one more example from verbs, and then I want to go to I'll skip forward a little bit. We may come back to verbs more in a minute if there's time left. They get very, very complex, and as long as I can just illustrate the point with a few words, I think we'll be okay. Let me show you some of how, let me just show you something that has a subject to it, not a command, but this is something like saying, I am singing. And we'll stick with the same verb so you can see how it works. We'll call this progressive forms, the ing type of situation. Am singing, is singing, are singing. So if you want to say, I am singing, you would figure that ne-o would be in there somewhere, which it is. And what you do for this ing, the am-ing kind of form, is you put a prefix on the front, ha, and then you put another prefix, si, which means the I part. This is I. This is part of the progressive form, the ha, and then the si means I, the ne-o means sing, and then we need to put a suffix on the end, which is sa. So this is the progressive marking on a verb really has 2 parts. You have to put a prefix and a suffix to make a verb of this form. So to say I am singing, you say hat si ne o sa. I left off a pitch mark there. And for the dual, you have to put in an extra prefix up here if you want to say we too are singing. If you want to say a bunch of us are singing, we, in other words, plural, meaning 3 or more, are singing. That'll come out the same except for this infix that I showed you a moment ago in the commands. So it comes out hat si ne, and then we need that suffix wa o sa. We're singing, meaning a bunch of us, or at least 3 or more of us. So you see the ne-o thing is split up by this infix that was stuck in the middle. So you have prefixes like this and this. You have infixes like wa, and you have suffixes like sa. And Caddo words are made up of many little parts like this. And sometimes when you add the parts together, the adjacent sounds will affect each other and make some of these consonants change into other consonants, and vowels drop out, and all sorts of very amazing things. Let me look at a little higher scale of organization now and show you a few sentences. Just, we won't really have any specific lesson very much in any one kind of sentence, but just to make the point that word order in Caddo is very often going to be different than it is in English. Let's see. If you want to say just a phrase, pretty good, the word for good is ha'ahat. Or let me use a longer form of this because I want to come out with there's something I'm aiming at here. Kuha'ahat. Let's say kuha'ahat. That means just good, really. This is something that's used in response to a greeting. If you ask someone in Caddo, how are you doing, you might say just fine. Usually you'll say kwa'ahat, high pitch there, which means, this means something like just. And this part here means good. And then if you want to say pretty good or rather good, you need to add a word over here that means pretty or rather, which would be spelled sha. And so this is like pretty good. But notice that in English we say pretty good. In Caddo you say something like good, pretty. So the modifier comes after the thing, and this is often going to be the case in Caddo. Let me give you a couple of whole sentences too to show word order differences. If you want to say this is a man, in Caddo you say di, which means this, but then you say shui da'a, which is really word for word you're saying man is instead of is a man. Another difference is that there is no word, no article like you don't say a man or the man. You just say this man is, and that means this is a man. So every language has its own principles of organization, which are called grammar. And these are some of the features of Caddo grammar. Let me give you one more example. He bought an apple. The word apple is going to come first in Caddo, most typically. So you would say ka'as, that's the word for apple, or fruit really. Ka'ni'a. He bought an apple. So again, this is the one that means apple, and this is the word that means he bought, which happens to include a suffix here, which means past tense, which we won't get into. But I just wanted to illustrate some of the overall gross differences when you put together a whole sentence. Now I want to talk just a little bit about semantics in the last few minutes that we have left. Semantics can cover some very subtle and sophisticated things, but it also has to do with just how your vocabulary is organized, which can be rather simple and interesting to look at. I thought I would show you a few examples of areas of Caddo vocabulary and how it seems to show a certain way of looking at the world, or it certainly organizes the world differently than the English vocabulary does. Let's see, let me show you another suffix. This is one suffix that does occur on nouns, and it'll relate names for various animals to each other, among other things. We have a word wihit, which I think we mentioned last show, which means skunk. Now, if you want to talk about a little skunk or a baby skunk, you say wihit titi. I'll put the heading up here little so I won't run out of space on all of these. I'm going to show you a lot of diminutive or little type of forms. Wihit is just a skunk. Wihit titi is a little skunk. Now, bata means fish. And a little fish would be bata titi. So you can see the same thing is occurring on the end of these words to modify them to make them mean a little one. That's just an I, badly written I there. Bata titi. And the word for rat is dut, D-A-T. But if you're talking about a mouse, that breaks down to mean a little rat. So it's going to be dut titi. And that means, could mean little rat, but it's basically the expression for mouse. Now let me show you a little bit more interesting one. The word for train, to get out of animals for a moment, tsakong-ki. There's a nice glottalized K there. Tsakong-ki means a train, but a car is a little one of those things. Tsakong-ki ti-ti. I had more examples to show, but it slows me down to write. Let me just read a couple more as we finish up here. We're down to about 2 minutes. There's a general word, we use it in one of the examples. In Caddo, a word ka'as, which means fruit. It was used in one of the examples for apple, but actually ka'as by itself just means fruit. If you want to clarify that you mean apple, you can say ka'as hainku, which is a smooth ka'as, and that's the word for apple. Or you can use another expression with that same stem within it. Ka'as habashku means a sour ka'as, that's lemon. Ka'as ch'u is a hairy ka'as, which is a peach. So you can see how this whole semantic area is sort of tied together by this word ka'as, modified in differing ways to show the various qualities of the different fruits. And while we're on fruits, I'll just mention the word for pear, which is kind of cute. It's ka'isui wahukit, which means nose sticking out, because the pear kind of has that shape. It looks like somebody's nose sticking out on the front. Let me just say a quick word about kin terms. I won't even be able to give you all the examples. But there's one word for father in Caddo, which is a'a, and there's one word for mother, which is ina. A man or a woman or anyone would use that same word for their father or their mother. But when it comes to brothers and sisters, it's much more complicated. The semantics breaks out differently. In English, we can talk about your brother or your sister. You can add expressions like older, younger, little, baby, or something like that. But basically, we have one word for brother, one word for sister. In Caddo, a woman's older brother is a kinit. A woman's younger brother is kinit tik tik, that same tik tik that we had on these words. But a man's older brother is inay, an entirely different word. And a man's younger brother is tuwi, an entirely different word again. So you have to keep track of more semantic factors when you speak Caddo in order to come up with the right word. And similarly with sister. A woman's older sister is iye, her younger sister is iye tik tik. But a man's older sister is ta-hey, not at all the same. And a man's younger sister is ta-hey tik tik, again using that suffix that means a little or diminutive. So you can see that a number of areas of semantics as well as grammar and the sound system itself are organized very differently in Caddo, which shouldn't be surprising because Caddo is not English or Spanish or French or Japanese. Every language has its own system. I hope this gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the complexities of the Caddo language and that you can appreciate that it really is a rich, fully developed, very sophisticated kind of system. Join me next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene madaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene madaone.